Hello Internet and welcome to another tutorial video for Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. In this episode we will be talking about tile sets, but first up I am recording this as an addendum because I made a mistake. Yes, I know, mistakes, blah blah, etc. Anyway, I recorded this video and then I learned later that many of the tile sets mentioned here are no longer included with the game. Now this happened pretty recently, so I wanted to explain that. For example, in this video I mentioned Hitbutton ISO, which is an isometric tile set that reminds me of XCOM. This is available with the most recent stable version 0.f-2, but not on current experimental versions. So if you're watching this and you want to play with that tile set on experimental, you would have to install it manually. You can do this by downloading the stable version, locating the GFX folder, and then copying the Hitbutton folder over to your experimental version's GFX folder. Now this is the gist of how to install a tile set manually, by the way. I never mentioned that in the video either, making a lot of mistakes today. But yes, that is why some of these will not appear in whatever version you've downloaded. This is probably an indicator that no one is updating these tile sets and they've sort of fallen by the wayside. This means that if you transfer them from stable to experimental, they will have more broken tiles than they would on older versions. Anyway, I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there, so I'm going to pass you off to the original video. Hello Internet and welcome to another tutorial video for Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. In this episode we will be talking about tile sets, how to choose which tile set to use, and just some basic information about them. We'll also touch a bit on ASCII if that's more your jam. Now for those that don't know, a tile set is the collection of art assets that are displayed representing objects within the game. Tiles are only available if you download a tiles build of the game. We talked about this in our video about obtaining the game. If you downloaded a curses build, for instance, you will not have access to tiles, you will be limited to ASCII characters. For an example, here we can see the Ultica tile set. Now this shows not only my character, but the world around me. You can see here there's a bed, there's a dresser, etc, etc. Now there are quite a few tile sets available for Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, and I will not be talking about all of them in this episode. We will touch on some of them and I'll show you what they look like in this video, but we're definitely not going to hit all of them. So first, there are several that actually come with the game. As of the time of this recording, Ultica is the default tile set. That's what we saw earlier. This is what I will be using throughout this tutorial series. I'm doing this because it's the tile set that I typically use in my own personal play and because it is now the default, so this is what most players will see when they first boot up the game. If you want to try out the various tile sets that are included with the game, you can go into your settings menu. We will go down to the graphics tab and navigate down to line 29 through 31. Line 29 lets you toggle tile sets on or off. Setting it to off will set your game to ASCII for those of you that would want something like that. Line 30 will let you select the tile set, and then line 31 allows you to enable graphics on your map screen. This is a very new feature as of the time of this recording, and it will be based on your tile set, so each tile set gets its own map screen. Like I said, brand new feature. It's a little bit wonky at the moment, so we probably will not be using it in this series, but in the future I suspect that the maps will look pretty great with tiles. So now let's talk about some of the tile sets that come with the game when you first download it. I'm not going to talk about all of them in detail, but let's touch on some of the unique or noteworthy sets. So first up we have ASCII Tiles. This is a tile set of ASCII characters. It's not the same look as using a terminal back in the day, but it's old school enough to probably satisfy some of you OGs. It's also worth noting that the ASCII tile set is the only complete tile set in the game. Whenever something new gets added to the game, it generally does not immediately have a tile, and in some tile sets it might take a really long time to get an image that represents that item. Regardless of sprite though, it will always have an ASCII character, and therefore it can always be represented in this tile set. Next up there is Chesthole. This was the default tile set way back in the day when I first started playing the game. It is severely outdated now, but seeing it does give me some sort of nostalgia, so I thought I would mention it. I would not recommend using this tile set just because it is very old and no one is working on it, but I thought I would mention it for any of you old returning players who might have grown up, so to speak, with this particular set. There's also Hitbutton ISO. It's a very unique and is one of the only isometric tile sets that I'm aware of. It's pretty interesting. I don't know that I would ever play a game with it enabled, but it definitely reminds me of playing the original XCOM games way back in the 90s when I was a kid, so it gets a shout out here just for being pretty unique. For those of you who are more retro inclined, we have Retrodays and Neodays. For a short period, Retrodays was in fact the default tile set of Cataclysm. It's definitely got an old school feel to it, and it is extremely up to date for those of you who really need to have a complete tile set. The set always reminds me me of Caves of Cud. There's just something about the ground tiles that actually really bothers my eyes. I think it's a really great tile set, it's just not for me personally. Cuteclysm is another one. It also has a very retro feel, at least to me. The solid colors remind me a lot of like shareware DOS games from way back in the day when I was a child. I'm not sure if that's really the intended look. It kind of also gives me like a Game Boy vibe, but that's what I always think of when I see this. It's a pretty neat tile set. Candleberry, I believe, is the main person working on this, and they make wonderful art, so. And then the main one that I will recommend for new players is Ultica. Again, it's included with the game and it's currently the default tile set, so when you boot things up, this is what you're going to see. Now I like this tile set a lot, mostly because it's a little less cartoonish than some of the other sets, and it has more realistic proportions for characters and enemies. Now it's not 100% complete, there are broken tiles in this set, but there is a small team of people that work to make sprites for Ultica on a very regular basis, and I think most of the tiles look really fantastic. So those are the ones I wanted to touch on. Now, regardless of which tile set you select, remember the game's mechanics, the content, it's all the same, it's just gonna look different. It doesn't change anything mechanically with the game, this is all purely cosmetic, and it's really up to you how you want the game to look. Other things of note about tile sets, generally they are not immediately updated, as I said. Some of them are completely abandoned. For example, I don't think Chesthole has been updated in several years. Ultica, on the other hand, gets updated every few weeks. Retrodays is probably the fastest evolving tile set because of the more simplistic nature of the sprites. They can really churn out that art. However, because tile sets are not updated every day, there will usually be a few things in the game that don't have a sprite and will appear as ASCII characters. Now I know this really bothers some people, but honestly after playing so long, I don't even notice them anymore. It's really not a big deal. I don't see why people fuss over it so much. There's really no way around this. Regardless of which tile set you choose, there will always be a period of time between something new being implemented and then it actually getting a sprite. You're going to need to accept that if you update the game frequently. It is just a fact of life. And then finally, there are some tile sets available that do not come with the game. These are known as third party. I will not be covering them in this episode. If you find a third-party tile set, it will need to be installed manually, and you're going to need to follow the instructions provided by the creator of that set. There are a few third-party sets kicking around, but I highly recommend that you at least try Ultica and the others that are included with your game before you wander off to some third-party tile set. Also, please do not post links or ask questions or ask for links to these third-party tile sets in my comments. I'm just going to ban you if you start posting links. This is really not the place for that. If you are looking for a third-party tile set, you should ask around Discord or Reddit. Someone will definitely be able to suggest them to you. And I think that's the end of the video. I just wanted to touch on tile sets, tell you how to enable them, and explain why you probably will see ASCII characters from time to time. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and/or dislike button on your way out, and I of course will be back with more tutorial content in the near future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.